Welcome, everyone. Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome, everyone, to this special edition of our show where we dive deep into some of the most urgent issues shaping Jamaica's economy. Our title today is Jamaica Economy at a Crossroad. What's next for the island nation? From stubborn trade deficit to over-reliance on tourism, remittances, and U.S. economy, to exciting opportunities in renewable energy, digital transformation, and diaspora investment, Jamaica faces big choices ahead. So to help us unpack all of this today, and he needs no introduction, Dennis Chung. Dennis, how are you doing?
Yeah, man. How are you doing, Cranky? I'm good, man.
I am doing well. As some of you may know Dennis as the GenSec for the Jamaica Football Federation, but you may not know that Dennis is a chartered accountant. I'm going to call him an economist, even though he may not call himself that. Mm-hmm. Our economic strategist. He's an author, columnist, board chairman, as we've talked about in previous discussion, and a powerful voice in Jamaica's national development for over 2 decades. So, Dennis, we're here to talk Jamaica economy.
Yeah, man, you're aging, my man.
No, I'm showing maturity and experience. So let's start with that. Dennis, let's start with that. What do you want to say before we jump into this? Because I have a lot of questions and things to unpack.
Well, on the economy, I think that the economy is actually where it is now in terms of where it is located for growth and development is actually in the best position it has ever been.
Well, don't go into that. Don't go into that yet. Don't go into that. We're going into all of that. We're going into all of that, and we can talk about whether it's in the best position, because I'm going to challenge you on that. So don't go into that yet. Let me start up by saying this, actually. Let's start with the big picture, an overview. And you can do that now. So how would you assess the strength of Jamaica's economy? Because I'm looking at the GDP. I'm looking at GDP growth as moderate. Inflation seems manageable. It was over 6%. If you look at the US, it's about 2 point something. Unemployment is somewhat down. But are we growing in the right areas? Are we growing in the right areas?
All right. So what is happening and why I made that statement is because in order to grow, you need to have a firm foundation. Right? So everything that is happening now are things I've always been advocating. And if you look at the economy over the years, certainly the last period that we had really of any consistent growth was the 1960s, right? Ever since that, we've been seeing declines with some amount of growth, some, sporadic growth, but then no consistency. And the reason for that is because since 1972, certainly, our labor productivity has been falling, right? So if you ask me if we're where we need to be in order to see that growth take off, no, we're not there. And I had said when we came out of COVID, I had said that after we recovered to where the economy was before COVID, that would start to grow at rates of 1% to 2% again, right? Because that is just what the economy has the capacity to do. So if a car can go 100 miles per hour, it don't matter how much you press the gas. It is not going to go more than that. So we're not where we want to be. But I think that the foundational things that we're doing are the right things. These are, and the reason why I say the right things, I've always believed and I've always said that the things that are being done now are the things that are going to be required to grow the economy. So if we look, for example, at the whole matter of public transportation, we're trying to build out, right? And since PJ Patterson was in, we started building out the highways. right? And if you look at what happened with the US economy after the Great Depression, that what really got US going was the building out of the highways.
I thought it was which Great Depression? 29?
29. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was World War II helped them quite a bit actually.
Well, wars does help the US because they produce weapons.
Right.
Right. But what Roosevelt did after the Great Depression is he focused on infrastructure and started building out infrastructure. So if you look in the US, for example, one of the most efficient things that is in the US is how people move around, right? Look at New York. I mean, can you imagine if they didn't have the subway stations, what would happen? There'd be total gridlock, right? So as an economy, we need to move people around. And that has been the bane of the Jamaican economy. We've not been able to move people around because the more people move around is the more economic activity you have, right? It means also that people can live far from the cities, right? Which means that real estate prices around the cities can go down, right? Because demand will reduce. It means that if people can move around efficiently, and there's an argument globally now that it is a good thing to provide free public transportation because free public transportation enables people to move around. When people move around, they spend money, right?
Yeah. So look, density of population is good and bad, right?
Yeah.
Because you do want to have the economic activity throughout the country. Commerce is much better when there's mobility. And as they say, transportation, roads are better. You can move goods more freely.
Right.
So totally agree with that concept, actually.
Yeah. And then the other thing which we are looking at now, and I think we've taken too long as a country, is the matter of energy prices.
Don't reach energy. We have a whole thing for energy. We have a whole section for because I have something which I think is brilliant. Because I'll come up with it, but we'll see if it's brilliant or not. We'll see if it's brilliant or not. Because I've been thinking about this, right? So let's think about macroeconomics, big picture.
Yeah.
Jamaica GDP is somewhere between 19 and 20 plus billion, right?
Right.
I did an analogy. I'll put it up between Jamaica and Singapore. All right? This is Jamaica and Singapore people. Let me if you can see it, people. I thought it was really interesting, actually. I'm not sure if it's that clear, everyone. You can see it.
It's very
Singapore and Jamaica had similar, got that their independence about similar. I think Singapore 65, Jamaica 62. The growth in the two countries, and some of these data may be a little bit off, people, so don't take it everything exact. I went to 3 sources to get the data, so I hope it's accurate. And I cross-checked the sources. But if you look at population, GDP, real GDP, industries, there's a theme here in the direction of travel.
right.
The key theme, which is not reflective here, one of them is around corruption and intolerance for corruption. Another one is about STEM and the focus on STEM. Now, they're autocratic, right? Let's be honest. And democracy sometimes is drawback. Look at China, look at Singapore. You will ask yourself, is democracy as great as we say it is? But I like to be free, so I'm not going to fight it. But there's some factors here which jumps out at you. Look at per capita. You mentioned that in terms of reduction in per capita production. These things here are as clear as day, right?
Yeah.
The inflation rate I can live with for Jamaica. The concept of the whole FDI is a big look. These numbers are just people so starking in terms of what they represent. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean the numbers overall are correct. GDP, our unemployment now is about 3.5%.
Okay. So it's down from the 6% that was reflected here. Okay.
About 3.5.
Okay.
But what this is reflective of is the whole matter of labor productivity.
Yeah.
What has caused our challenge over the years since 1972 is declining labor productivity. So even though we have been able to see some amount of growth, right? There's no economy that can grow in any sustainable way, whether it be GDP overall or GDP per capita, without improved labor productivity. I'm at pains to make the point that what we have been doing since 1972 is everything except to try to grow labor productivity. And that is why I'm saying that when we do the initiatives like the public transportation, when we do the initiatives like the low energy, when we do the initiatives like reduce crime, what we're doing is setting up the foundation to increase labor productivity. If we can increase labor productivity, then we will see these numbers that Singapore is seeing.
Right. So Singapore's numbers, by the way, people are great. They're not okay. They're great.
They're great.
The ability to do business. Look at it. Number 2 in the world. They set up the environment. Follow the money is the way I call it.
Yeah.
Just follow the money. It's a capitalist society with an autocratic government, and they do everything to generate income and generate revenues. But they also have very stringent measures about reducing corruption. Every year in Singapore, enough people go to jail for corruption. Not debatable, right? In Jamaica, nobody goes to jail for corruption. I said nobody. De minimis of purpose go for corruption, and we know that there's corruption in this society. Let me pivot back though. I think Nigel did a good job of reducing our debt, right, to GDP ratio.
We're about 68% now.
Right. So I think I had something like 70-something%. Right. But he went from over 100, way over 100, to about 60-something%, which is good.
Yeah, it's very good because that is what has enabled us now to start getting money to build out our infrastructure, buy new buses and all of that. Because remember, when it was much higher, I mean, most of our budget was being paid out in debt. You know,
right?
So
yes,
that's what has caused it now.
Yeah, and what people don't realize, Dennis, is that when you have this huge debt, you got to pay interest on the debt.
Yeah,
and you got to find money to pay that interest, right? So now you're not paying back principal, you're paying by interest, which is significant and chokes a lot of developing countries.
Yeah.
So what were the key drivers behind this physical turnaround, and is it sustainable?
Well, the key driver behind it was really to get our fiscal spending in order, right? So we got our...
Okay, somebody want to reach you?
Yeah, it's all right. I'll call him back. So we were able to get our fiscal spending in order, and that is really what drove it. So you remember that and I recall very clearly because in 2013, when the whole thing was happening, I was at the PSOJ, and so I was very involved in what was happening. And you recall the economy almost fell off a cliff, and it was Peter Phillips at the time who was the finance minister, and he said, listen, so credit to him and Portia Simpson Miller. They said, listen, this is the way we have to go. We set up the Economic Policy Oversight Committee, right, with Richard Byles as the chairman, and they worked on fiscal rules. So what was put in place was a situation where you could not spend more money than a certain percentage, right? And what we were able to do is restrict that spending. Now, the country went through a very difficult time because we basically had to ensure that we're very tight with the expenditure. So what was happening before in terms of persons just borrowing money and spending, I mean, we couldn't do that anymore. So it was rough, right? But we did all of that to get the macroeconomic numbers under control, which is one of the things that Peter Phillips did. But there was no wage increase for a while, you know, and people did go through a difficult period. The other thing that we did is that we refinanced the debt. So the higher interest rate debt, we were able to refinance a good amount of it and bring in some lower interest costs debt.
Well, one second, Dennis. People are not taking any call yet. I'll tell you when I'm going to take calls. I'm not taking calls as yet. We're going to go through my questions first. Then I'll take calls for the program. But thank you for calling. Keep going, Dennis. Sorry.
Yeah. So those are the two primary things we did. And we just stuck to it, you know. And we ensured that every year our expenditure was a certain amount. We ensured that wages and salaries were capped. Because remember, there was a period of time that Peter Phillips actually froze wages and salaries. So there was no movement in that. And that was outside of the interest and the debt repayment. That was the biggest call on our budget. So we held that for like about 4 years. Nothing happened, right? Income levels, real income levels did decline. But that was necessary, because what was happening in the past is that, and I remember in 2010, when Ardishaw was finance minister and they were giving the teachers a 10% increase, I said, if you give it to them, inflation is going to occur again. And it did, right? So we had to do all of that to bring all the macroeconomic numbers under control. Once the macroeconomic numbers were under control, then it meant that business expansion was happening, right? We also drove tourism, right? So tourism kept growing. And once that happened, it means more foreign exchange is coming into the country, right? We did suffer a big decline. Oh, one of the things also, Cranky, remember the debt restructuring. That was major. There were 2 debt restructurings that happened. First, in 2010, under the JLP administration, and the second one when the PNP administration came in, and they also did a debt restructuring. And that shaved a lot off of the debt that was there, right? So they basically gave people a haircut, right?
Okay.
So you basically say, listen, I have $100 for you, but I can only afford to pay you 90, or you pay over a longer period of time, right?
Okay.
And that was how they did it. It took a lot of discipline, but the country stood together, private sector, public sector, and civil society, and we got it done.
So what's the projected real GDP growth?
For the fiscal year just ended, I think it has declined by about 1%.
So what is about 1.6?
It has the real GDP was a negative about 1%.
Negative 1%. Okay.
Yeah, for the fiscal year, that's what they're estimating.
So that's a problem, because what you like is your GDP to grow, which would then help you to put a dent in poverty, drive upward mobility, and probably expand your middle class, right? So you can't afford to have negative GDP. And it goes back to the concern I have, which is 70% of GDP services. Now 20% is industry and another 10% agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to that in terms of that mix has to change to have real substantive, sustainable growth. And if you think about the US, what Trump is doing, even though people think he doesn't know what he's doing, there is a method behind the madness, right? The question is, will the madness win out or the method win out? Whichever one. Because the whole construct is manufacturing drives the economy. And if you look at Singapore and China, especially China, it's the barometer as to how you can make progress of society when you control manufacturing.
Yeah.
So 70% service economy doesn't seem to work, actually. And here's the worst thing about it. When the 70%, most of that, they have concentration risk, where it relies on one country, it exacerbates the situation. What's your thoughts?
No, there's a risk. There's a concentration risk. But you have to look at what you have your competitive advantage in. Right now, our competitive advantage, and that's an economic term to, it would really gear people as to what is the best thing to produce, is tourism, right? So the biggest foreign exchange earner for us right now is remittances, and behind that is tourism, right? Our economy right now, and this is a situation with small island economies too. I mean, I think Singapore is an exception. They managed to develop industries out of nothing, and their geographic location has a lot to do with it, their advantage.
It also has a lot to do with leadership.
With
right?
leadership, of course.
They have a visionary strategy. They have a visionary leader and a strategic person. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
It has a lot to do with leadership.
Yeah.
But I think the best bet for the Jamaican economy now is to focus on building out where we have our competitive advantage, which is tourism. And I'll tell you why I say that. I use a simple example. We are underperforming right now with our tourism market. If you go to the hip strip, for example, the hip strip, you can get a hotel room for about $200 and something a night, right? Why is that? Why can you get a hotel room for $200 and something a night in Montego Bay, Jamaica, which is our tourism capital, a well sought after city? But you go to downtown Miami, you have to pay $300 and something a night. Or you go to Vegas and it's $400 and something a night, right? And they don't have anything different from what we have, in terms of, what we have to offer our tourists. But what they have is that when you go to a Vegas or downtown Miami, the aesthetics of the environment is number one, right?
Yeah.
So it's looking much better. But what has impacted us also is our crime rate, right? So I think that if you were to improve your infrastructure, which is what they're doing now, building out the infrastructure, if you are to improve your crime rate, I think that with the same product that we have, we can double our revenue from it, right? So we don't even talk about moving into more manufacturing yet. In terms of the manufacturing, I think that the best bet for us for manufacturing and agriculture is not to export, but rather if we were able to build tourism substantially, is to produce for that market. So that would solve the issue of our manufacturing increasing, our agriculture increasing, and also we could reduce food imports. But
I would reposition that, Dennis. I understand what you're saying, but I would look at it. You're right. China had a strategic initiative of becoming self-sufficient by 2025. That means they can function in the economy by themselves without needing anybody to be functioning, right? Get about export. Concept is what you're saying, but they also think exporting is important, right? So as you're saying, you produce enough goods and services to be self-sustainable, and to be able to satisfy your needs internally. But at some point, you need to expand that to export, right? Because Jamaica has a huge trade deficit. You try to talk about trade deficit, go look at Jamaica's trade deficit for a small economy. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I agree. At some point, you have to export. But I'm saying the easiest thing for us to do, right, is to satisfy the local market first.
Yes.
Right? And then you can export after that, right? I think that if we do that, because remember also that what you're going to be doing is cutting out also your imports. We're importing $1 billion a year in food, right? So where I see the savings that we can cut down our trade deficit is that $1 billion a year in food, but also on energy. We are importing.
We're going to get to the energy. We're going to get to it because I have a solution. And we'll get to the energy. I have a solution for you. And buy into the solution. You'll get to the energy, people. Energy. We don't want Dennis to get that energy yet. And we'll get to the energy. And Dennis can, I disagree with me. We'll get to the energy, Dennis. But you're right about all the things that you're saying so far, actually. Let me get to something else. And then we can come to the old energy and sort of pivot to what we can do differently. Right? So if we go to trade and economic structure,
right?
We are really well situated in terms of where we're positioned locationally.
Yeah.
So how can we leverage our location and the logistic potential to become a regional hub for trade or transshipment?
Well, we actually had set up a framework for that, the SEZ legislation, Special Economic Zone. That's really what that is set up for. We have a SEZ authority. And what it is that we we actually were supposed to have created a zone where people going to South America, for example, or into the Caribbean, they would come and use Jamaica as a warehouse or a shipping point, or coming from the US or Europe or that sort of thing. But I had said that when it was being done, that there are some things that we need to do in order for it to happen, right? And we still haven't done them. Our ports are not very efficient. So it comes back to the whole matter of labor productivity. So I agree with you. Geographically, we are set up in such a point that we should be a great, and this is effectively what Singapore was, Singapore was a great hub location, right? And they had a lot of things moving through there. We are set up like that, but we have an issue of labor productivity. So we're not getting the people to come here because we have not fixed that labor productivity issue. I mean, you know what it is like, Frankie, to come to Jamaica and the bureaucracy you have to go through, right?
Yes, and people, Singapore is number 2 in the world on the ability to do business easily.
Right, and
right? Which is significant.
Your chart, right? The ability to do business. So we have to address those things, and once you address those things, then you will find that it will actually improve.
Yeah.
Right. And we can use that is another one of our competitive advantages that we have not been able to use. So we could be the Panama Canal of the Caribbean.
Yeah. No, we could be. But we right now we're not. Here's a question for you. The Rubio was in Jamaica the other day,
right?
And they had some discussion with the Prime Minister. One thing that came up was about crime, and he's going to go back and revisit the bulletins they put out, which I don't think he will, but he says so. Here's the thing that bothers me, though, is that the Caribbean and Latin America and South America, those countries in this region, and Mexico, Mexico did sue the U.S., they have not pushed back enough on the U.S. about the U.S.-made guns which are destroying the region. Right? It's not debatable. If you didn't have the U.S.-based guns, even though I'm not going to say gun is the root cause for crime, but it's a significant contributor to crime. So why is it the Caribbean region and Latin America and South America pushing back on the administration to say, you keep on saying that we're putting people in your country, people leave for economic opportunities, but they also leave because of safety reasons. Why aren't you addressing your gun problem, which will help us address some of the challenges that we have? What do you say on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a point. But you remember the drug, the drug problem that the US has?
Yeah.
They've had it for decades, and they've tried to stop the supply. Right?
But have they tried hard enough?
I think they've tried very hard over the years. Right? The issue is that what we need to do, I mean, I understand the whole thing of pushing back and saying, if you stop that. But the real problem that we have is the demand for it here. That's what we have control over. And
right, but if I cut off supply, then I don't care what demand I have, I will not be able to have it, will I?
I know, but once there's demand, Cranky, people are going to find a way to supply it.
Right? But if you look at what the fentanyl issue, which the US complain about, which is there's a demand in the US, it's the same analogy here, Dennis. Demand in the US for fentanyl, right? He complains about Canada and Mexico, and frankly, it's a scapegoat for Canada because a very small amount of that comes through Canada. But he's saying that's one of his reasons for his trade tariffs, right? Mm-hmm. Same concept with guns going to Jamaica. You're producing the guns. You're bringing the guns are coming from your border, from your country. So you got to address it. I agree with you in concept of supply and demand.
Let me tell you something. Those strategies that they have is not going to address the fentanyl thing.
No, I don't disagree with you.
Once there's demand for it, people are going to find a way, because all it means is that when they do that, all that happens is that the market price goes up. Market price goes up, it drives supply. What we need to do and what we have control over is to address the demand for the guns, right? So I believe that when you find a man, and we have laws in place now, when you find a man with an illegal gun, it must be severe penalties.
Dennis, that's where you and I disagree. Here's my view on that.
Yeah.
No, here's my view on that. No, the severe penalty, we've been doing that with gun courts since the 70s, Dennis.
No. Remember, we just did some amendments and it seems to be working, right? In terms of
but there's tangential evidence to make me feel good, and there's material evidence to substantiate that we work. The key thing for these economists is this: what's the root cause of this? And we know what some of the root cause, and they're probably root causes versus root cause. And then the question is, how do I fix the root cause?
Right.
If you look at Jamaica's poverty rate, people, go look at the poverty rate. How much the average person within poor spend per day? It's ridiculous. Seriously.
Yeah, man. So you see that it comes back to labor productivity again.
That's true, though.
Everything drives back to that, right? So we need to fix the labor productivity problem. But I think the commissioner right now has been doing a very good job in terms of the impact on crime. I mean, in 2023, murders went down by 19%. In 2024, it went down by 25%. And year to date for February, it is down 35% already. Right?
Is that preventive measures or other things that's causing the reduction? Is it truly preventive measures or detective measures, I call them? Yeah.
It is the strategies that are being employed. What we're finding now is that when someone commits a murder, they're caught very quickly. Right? So the murder, for example, that was committed on Mullines and Boulevard.
Yes, that open day in the middle of the morning. Yes.
They've caught somebody already.
Okay.
Right?
Because these guys are coming on bikes, right? They quick get away. Yeah.
So they're dealing with it. And I think that I have always said in another 2 months, we're going to start feeling it in terms of feeling safer, right? Even now, with the efforts that are being put into the road indiscipline by my good friend Gary, keep forgetting Gary's last name, but Mackenzie, right? You're feeling the difference on the road now, right? So I think that murders are still high now. In February is the lowest February in terms of murders in 25 years, but still we killed 40-something people in February.
Yes, I was going to say that.
Yeah,
kill 40-something people.
It's still high, right?
Right.
But it is coming down. And if we continue to reduce it at this trend, right, then you're going to find that the criminal is going to question more and more. Because Mobeno, you have a lot less killings. St. Elizabeth, you have a lot less killings down there. People are going to start saying, boy, it's not worth the risk anymore because I'm getting caught quickly, right? Once that starts happening, right, and a man realizes now that when he gets caught with a gun, it's 15 years automatically. People are the demand is going to reduce. So it don't matter how much is being sent out of the US, right? People are not going to want to take it up. And I think that is an easier path for us to use to reduce the demand for guns rather than to go and try to address the supply of guns. Because you're not going to, once the demand is there, people are going to find a way. I mean, remember the other day, we talked about drugs for gun from Haiti, people jump in a boat and we get it. Right. Or coming to Colombia, So, I mean, I think that we'll get there. I think in 2 months' time, you're going to start feeling the difference.
Look, I think the strategy has to be multifaceted. I think the measures being undertaken locally can help. I think the perfect example of this and the worst example of this, so I'm contradicting myself, is El Salvador. El Salvador, maybe 5-10 years ago, went from 65, somewhere around 100 murders to about 128 last year, right? But their measures are draconian. They just arrest people who may have tattoos, they're in gang, anybody in gang get put in jail, right? But the president got reelected with 80% approval rating because people feel safe. When you feel safe, you generate business, you can do business, the economy can improve. And the question for Jamaica is, do you go that draconian?
I don't think we need to. I think the measures that are being employed around now, which is mostly intelligence, right, is working, right? So if it's
Okay.
working, as I said, year to date we're 35% down. If we continue that trend, it means that in March we're going to see less murders. In April we're going to see less murders, and after a while you're going to have a very small amount of murders per month, right? So I think, and I know the commissioner very well, and talking to him, he knows what he's doing. He's putting in specific initiatives to address certain problem areas, and you see it's working. We're seeing less robberies are down, rapes are down. So once people start feeling safe, I can tell you, people are going to, it means that, I'll give you an example why crime is important. If people feel safe, it means that instead of closing your factory at 5 o'clock, you open for 1 or 2 more shifts, right? That comes back to the whole argument about manufacturing.
Right.
You understand?
Well, that's an interesting point, Dennis, which is, it's funny we talk about productivity in Jamaica, but then when you look at the diaspora, there's no issue with diaspora productivity, which is the same people who just migrated.
No, but
right?
the environment is different.
Well, that's the point I'm saying, which is the benefits to be derived from me working above the norm is not sufficient to encourage that to occur. So let's jump into something else about human capital and education.
Right.
Despite relatively high literacy rate and tertiary education rates improving, brain drain remains a major concern. What policies can be retained for skilled professionals and encourage return migration? Because we think about people like Nigel, who was a rising star, and all of a sudden in Ghana IMF, right? And we see that continuously. That's why we have to go get Cuban nurses and doctors, because the US recruit these people away, even though they complain about us leveraging Cuba for their resources, their human capital. So what can we do to retain some of that talent or bring more talent in?
Good question. So the main reason why people leave is to improve their income levels, right? Because you have everybody who want to come back to Jamaica because of the weather and the culture and all of that, but people leave because of income. Again, Cranky, it comes back to productivity. The more productive you are, is the more you will earn, and that's the main reason. So for the same job in Jamaica, you get less pay than in the US, and because of productivity, right? Now, one of the challenges with productivity in 2013, when the IMF agreement was done, the IMF agreement said that we are not going to start seeing real elevated growth until we address labor market reform. The most instrumental attempt to do it, which is not even 10% of it, was when Nigel Clark did the public sector rationalization, right?
Which was a big uproar about, right?
It was a big uproar, right?
Right.
Because you know our politics already. But the fact is that until we properly reform the labor laws and the labor market, we will have productivity increase when crime goes down. We will have productivity increase when the public transportation is improved. But for real productivity increase, we have to reform the labor market. And I'll give you an example. So we both work in the same office, Cranky, right? And you, for each hour, you are producing widgets. We're doing the same job. For each hour, because I slack off, I produce 2 widgets. But guess what? When the time comes for bargaining, you have a thing called collective bargaining. The both of us get the same percentage increase.
Yeah.
Right? So I am not you are not incentivized to continue producing 10 widgets because I'm producing 2 and doing other things that I want to do. Right? and I'm getting the same increase like you, right? So we have to address those issues and people don't realize how important that is, because unless we tie reward to productivity, you're not going to see the increases. You're going to be able to cause slight increases because of public transportation, because of energy costs and that sort of thing. But the real increase comes from when someone is taking the initiative to drive his productivity because of the reward he's getting. And that is why people will go abroad and work, and they'll work harder than here, because they're getting more money. So you find, cranky, like in the US, for example, if you decide you have a job and you decide that, you know what, rain falling, I'm not going to work tomorrow, what happened to you?
Well, it depends. You may not have to go to work anymore.
Right.
Because you may not have a job.
In Jamaica, if you catch a man stealing on camera and you have not followed one procedure in the 20 steps that you're supposed to take, that man will go and get back his job. And it take you a year before you get a ruling and the man get back his job, or you have to pay him off.
So it's like you need dodge in Jamaica.
don't wish that on us, please.
When I say dodge, people don't take it in the wrong context. So companies and organizations have material reforms, right? The dodge concept, not how they're doing it.
Yeah, the dodge concept is very good,
Yes.
But the way it's being implemented.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful, right? So
it's very, very good.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
It's the right concept, but the execution is poor. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is it. So if you think about it, even if I were to get, the both of us were to get improvements to our income, because we now can rely on public transportation, so we don't have to be putting out money every month for a car, right? Or we have less energy costs at home. So we see a slight improvement in our productivity return, but you're not going to get that driven productivity improvement because the laws
the rewards are not there. The rewards are not there.
No.
Yeah. Here's another question for you, Dennis. Mm-hmm. In your view, is Jamaica investing enough in, say, vocational, technical, and STEM education to match our economic needs and our future industries?
I see.
That's where Singapore distinguishes itself. That's where Singapore distinguishes itself.
Yeah. I don't think so. I see a lot through heart being done, and this is a conversation I've had at a different level. I'm actually a council member at the University of the West Indies, right? These discussions are taking place, and I go beyond STEM, cranky. Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and a guy named Ray Kurzweil, who wrote a book called The Singularity is Near and The Singularity is Nearer. They said that in about 10 years' time, artificial intelligence will replace 41% of jobs. Right? So I think as a country, and the government has actually set up a committee, right, which has started working, which I think is chaired by my friend Chris Record, to look at the impact of AI, because it's going to be significant. So we still have not got enough from a STEM point of view education, but the world is even going past STEM now, right? And we need to prepare for it. So you're right. We're not where we need to be now, but there's another revolution happening in terms of AI. And people don't realize how life-changing AI is going to be,
I agree with you. Look, I use AI a lot, people. But every day I live on AI for whatever things I'm trying to get done to help. Sometimes you have to challenge AI or figure out how to guide AI to get you to the right place. But from an efficiency standpoint, you can make it think for you, but it's very effective. And as you're saying,
you go on ChatGPT and ask that question. So I'm looking at, for us cyclists, who the bicycles are expensive, and many people buy and say they don't want to tell their wife what the real price is, right? So I'm looking at something where a man says to his wife, She says, how much did that bicycle cost? He said $300. And then she said, but I went on AI and it cost $10,000. So it can work against you too, you know.
Yes, it can work against you. But look, it's a brilliant tool that should be leveraged, right?
Yeah.
Here's the question though, because AI is biased, people. If you don't realize it, AI is biased. So how does Jamaica actually be behind building the AI versus just leveraging the AI, just using it, right? You have to also be able to build your own, not just leverage, right? You also have to understand how to use it to make you much more efficient and more effective as a community and as a society.
And that is why we need to rethink how we educate people. So you talk about STEM. Look at the link here now. Jamaica and the Caribbean has had a challenge in terms of the matriculation rate in mathematics. What does mathematics teach you to do? Think and solve problems. That's essentially what technology and STEM is. It is supposed to, you have to be able to think. And if you can't think, you can't be effective in them. But there is an advantage, a competitive advantage that we have when AI comes, and we can take advantage of it. So when the 41% of workers are replaced, so Bill Gates said that in 10 years' time, we'll have 2-day work weeks, right? By that time, Frankie, me and you will be on the beach somewhere, so we won't benefit from it, right? But the next generation will benefit, right? But he says 2-day work weeks. What does that mean? That means that the average man will have more time for leisure. The Caribbean and Jamaica in particular is built on leisure. If you think about tourism,
we are ready on leisure. We are ready.
Right. But you understand what I'm saying? If we can market ourselves in such a way so that we are taking advantage of that additional leisure time that people have, because the way I see it in the future, you ever watch this movie Surrogates with Bill Willis? Bruce Willis?
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it.
So effectively, what it is, and it is something I think that's going to happen. That people now they don't physically go to work. Everyone will have a robot that represents them, and by owning that robot, you send that robot to work. The robot gets paid, and basically the money comes to you. So you are owning your own tool now, and that's where I think productivity and efficiency is going to move. Capital. So on the Industrial Revolution, before that, capital was very concentrated in the hands of a few, and feudalism. As you have the Industrial Revolution, the Information Revolution, the internet came, capital now is more widely dispersed. AI, I think, has the ability to disperse it even more. So you as an individual, Frankie, you can have a robot that actually goes out and does your work. So what you need to do is find that robot. You have the more time for leisure.
But then there's a concern that we're going to even have more concentration of wealth in fewer hands, because the people who build the AI going to make a lot of money. There'll be trickle-down effect, right? As you say, the robot and you leveraging AI and robots. But that the people like the Altmans of the world who have ChatGPT, they're going to accumulate all this massive wealth like we see now with Bill Gates, or we see now with Musk, for example.
All right, so that's where government comes in. I think my view is that governments will have to have a more interventionist role. So in other words, societies, I think, is going to get more social, right, in terms of democratic socialism, right? If you think about that, what we know. So in other words, government is going to play more and more a role in ensuring that people live. You say they talk about this thing about the minimum wage, livable wage, that in some countries they're saying this is the minimum wage that you will get, irrespective of what you do. So if you look at the Nordic countries, for example, they're a prime example of that sort of society, right? I think that government is going to have to play that role. So, and the UK, for example, I mean, you stay home and you get a certain amount of money coming for you, because what happens is that the people who make the money, I think, is going to be paying more in terms of taxes. Right?
It depends, because in the UK, there's a progressive tax rates, as you know, across Europe. I think in the UK, you pay there are 3 tax segments you pay into, and there are more altruistic societies who are used to giving back. There's some other societies like the US, and those who are around the US don't have the same view of life.
But it's going to change, It's going to change. I can tell you. I see where it is going to change. I think that the societies that actually are more inclusive and give back, as you say, altruistic, those are the societies that are going to do much better, because you're going to find that the people are going to be more productive. With AI coming also, you have to do that, because if you don't do that, you're going to have a very high level of discontent in the population. Right. So, and because technology AI is going to replace most of the jobs. So you can't just have people out there, not doing anything. And if you look at it, a lot of the sci-fi movies, talking about AI, that's essentially how they're set up,
Yeah, I mean, the sci-fi movies that come from people have this prognostication, prediction, and perspective on the future, and they leverage scientists to help inform their view. And and sometimes it doesn't always come up, but you're right. A lot of times it does, because it's been something that's been figured out. Let's pivot a little bit to public sector governance and corruption. This is important. Right. Public sector inefficiency, corruption concerns, and bureaucratic delays still frustrate investors and citizens. As such, how would you rate Jamaica's progress on reducing corruption and improving transparency in public procurement governance? And what's the next move that's needed in this area?
All right. So I have been involved in public sector for a while, on the boards primarily, right? And I think that over the years, we have made progress, right? I see that we have made progress. I think that much of what you hear people talk about corruption is really inefficiency, right? So the procurement process, we all know, is very inefficient. The Prime Minister, when he spoke the other day, said it best, right? He said that he's going to start issuing motor vehicle licenses for 2 years. And on new vehicles, the fitness certificate for new vehicles will be 5 years. And on vehicles up to 10 years old, between 5 and 10 years, up to 3 years. Inefficiency, as he said, drives corruption. If something is efficient, there's no need for corruption. And that is what I think has driven the corruption in Jamaica. And many people in Jamaica, they're used to it, but they're into corruption. So, for example, when you go and you don't want to wait in line, and you say to somebody, boy, do this to me and I give you $1,000. That's corruption,
Yes, right? But Dennis, the corruption is driven by a culture which basically says you have to get over. Right, no, but I'm just saying, if Dennis is being corrupt and Crank is being corrupt, and you have, say, before the game or Wisdom in the chat who are saying, well, they're taking money, why shouldn't I take it? I'm disadvantaging myself by not taking it.
Right.
So they become culturally pervasive.
It's become endemic. It's become accepted.
Yes, it become endemic. Exactly. Yeah. So then how do you change? I was saying this, Dennis, which is we should start off with, so we have a cutoff as a generation, and we can't save them. 5-year-olds, right? Primary school. Right. And we start do what Japan does, which is embed the culture of what we want to be in the schools at that early age and influence them. They have to go home to their parents still enough, but at the end of the day, we're trying to influence them from early to produce what I'm going to call less corrupt citizens.
Yeah, so there are a few ways, Cranky. So I agree. The socialization is key. Yeah, because I tell people all the while, I personally can't do anything wrong. If I do something I know is wrong, my conscience is going to kill me. The conscience would have killed me before they find out. Right? And that's how you will grow up to, right? Because your mother and father drill it in you.
Yeah.
This is wrong. Right? But what happens is that when you live in a society where the inefficiency is there, Sometime you might step out sometime, and you do something in order to circumvent a process. It's not no high level of corruption, right? But you do it because you're trying to survive. So I don't think that the culture alone, the socialization alone, is going to cause any massive change, right? Because everybody's not going to get socialized the same way, right? You have to have the inefficiency that the Prime Minister spoke about and cutting that out. That is the first thing. Because if I know that I can go and get my motor vehicle license or my fitness for 5 years, then within that 5 year span, first of all, you cut down the number of people who are going. But within that 5 year span, there is no need for any corruption. Because
but the question is, if I use 5 years as a barometer, do I run the risk of having vehicles which are not fit for purpose on the road?
And that's why I said new vehicles.
Okay.
So new vehicles are 5 years. Vehicles 5 to 10 years old are 5 years. And obviously, what you have also is you have during that time, remember, the police can stop you, check you, and that sort of thing. But at least you cut out that temptation of corruption with efficiency. The other thing, though, is that you have to have strict penalties. So one other thing about Singapore, if you spit out bubblegum on the road, what happened to you? Right?
Yes, but they also send politicians to jail. Jamaica doesn't send politicians to jail.
Yeah.
They send a lot of politicians to jail. A lot.
Yeah. And that is something that we have to do. But I think that many times when you hear people saying, boy, this politician has done so and so and this and that, and we hear scandals, a lot of times, it's inefficiencies that cause it, and the rules, right? I don't think that the number of people that we accuse, right, that most of them is into corruption. I'm not saying there isn't corruption, right? But I don't
Dennis, Dennis, you and I got to disagree. So let me say something, Dennis. There's a politician there that came out, it was maybe a year ago, talking about scamming and justifying scamming with the view that, you know what, those people take from us, so it's okay for us to take from them. And that person should never be in politics. That person should never be in leadership. You know what's wrong with the comment?
Yeah.
Wait,
no, I agree with you, but there was no corruption on his part.
But here's the point I'm making, though.
Was wrong.
But here's the point I'm making, though, because that leadership then leads to bad behavior. Two points I'm making. One is the person who you are scammed from has nothing to do with your history and what transpires with you. It could be a black person you are scammed from. It doesn't have to be a Caucasian. And even that's wrong to scam from anybody. Secondly, how can somebody in a leadership position, Dennis, leadership, go in the public domain and say that? Because you know what? It's deemed to be okay. That can't be okay. But so then you are the example of what is wrong with the country.
I agree with you, Cranky, but guess what? but guess what? Right?
Yes.
And this is what it all boils down to. At the end of the day, people will hear that and people will still vote for it,
No, but that's part, Dennis, it just exemplifies the problem. It just substantiates the problem, which is, this person is providing guidance and perspective, which is inappropriate. It's no different from Trump. I must say that, right? Bad behavior gets rewarded. That cannot be okay. And I don't care who get mad at me for saying that, because I know the Trumpsters come after me all the time when I talk about him. But the fact of the matter, Dennis, is I feel like I'm living in an alternate world nowadays. Like there's two different worlds where lying and bad is deemed to be good and vice versa. And we have to get back to what you mentioned before. When you and I were growing up, we knew good from bad.
Yeah.
We knew wrong from right.
Yeah.
We are said to be conflating those two things now, which doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense to me. Let's pivot a little bit. What opportunities do you see for Jamaica in the digital economy, including fintech, software development? We do BPO now, but BPO expansion, for example.
I think there are a lot of opportunities, but what we need to drive first and foremost is the development of human resources or technology. So, we speak about labor productivity. We'll come back to that again. If people are not educated and driven to be more productive, then you cannot develop a good digital economy. You can't develop, so our BPOs, for example, right? If we had people who were educated at that level, right, then we could develop BPOs based on digital content. Jamaica, in terms of BPO, you know, Jamaica is well positioned to take advantage of those high value BPOs. We speak English, right? And our geographical location.
Yeah.
We have good telecommunications infrastructure, right? We have good internet infrastructure, right? So we have everything that is needed in order to develop a robust sector in the BPO at that level. But what we don't have is the skill set and the productivity drive, right? I mean, you know how it is, Cranky. I mean, someone come down here and they're building roads, for example, and the next month, you know, there's a strike.
Yeah.
You know, so you know what happens after that? A man who is investing his money say, "Boy, why am I going to invest here where I always having a strike rather than go to dam rep?"
Yeah. Let's talk about something you mentioned earlier, climate change and renewable energy. Now, let's talk about sunshine literally.
Yeah.
Jamaica gets about, 3,000 hours of sunlight each year,
Right.
and we're still importing most of our energy.
Right.
Given the consistent sunshine we have, because Jamaica always had people, and our ongoing oil burden, do you believe solar energy should become a core product of our economy? Not just for sustainability, but also for job creation, energy independence, and economic resilience?
Oh, definitely. And I you know, I'm chairman of Wigton Energy, right? So let me say that I think that Jamaica is well on its way. I can talk for myself personally. I have for over a year now been fully on solar. My electricity bill every month is 550 Jamaican dollars. Right?
So wait, before you go further though, because then this is not the norm, right? Let me just say that this is not the norm. So how does the government help to facilitate and subsidize people getting solar now? Because now, when I say to people, say, Cranky, I don't understand why you're talking to Dennis about this, right? But no, but I agree with you in terms of what you're saying, because obviously that's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let me tell you, and I always emphasize it. The National Housing Trust has a solar loan that people can access. Right?
Right.
And the rate is very, very good. And I said to people all the while, go to NHT and access the loan, because once your monthly payment on the loan is less than what you would normally pay in electricity bill, you're ahead of the curve.
What's the break-even point? How many years? A friend of mine told me hers is 4.5 years.
Mine is 4 years.
Okay.
About 4 years.
Yeah,
and after that, the next expenditure I have to do maybe is on batteries is 4 years after that.
Right. Okay.
After that, the expenditure I have to do after that is 8 years after that.
Okay.
Right.
And also you don't worry about power outage.
No,
right?
no,
you can have backup, right?
And my internet is satellite, you know, is Starlink.
Oh yeah, Starlink is in Jamaica. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I don't have that. So right through the hurricane, when it was here the other day, Beryl, I had internet and power.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So here's the question then, actually. Because I watch a lot of Jamaican programming, and I see BYD in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Big showroom. Should Jamaica be thinking about going fully electric as it relates to reducing carbon footprint? Should they be thinking about going fully electric?
I think so. I think that will eventually get there. A lot of electric cars are on the road now. But it makes sense. I have an electric motorbike, right? And what do? I just charge it at home, right? And
I hope you charge outside your house, because those things can be dangerous.
Yeah, man, I charge it outside the house.
Hey, you put on yours.
Yeah. But I think so. I love it. It's much more efficient, you know. If your vehicle is fully electric, then not just the fuel that you have to import, but think about all the car parts that you
Yes.
don't have to import anymore.
Yeah, and what people don't realize, Dennis, about Jamaica. Jamaica is perfect for electric vehicles and people. You know why? Because what's the distance between Kingston and Negril? About 150 miles? Somewhere around there?
Yeah.
Most cars nowadays, you probably can get over 300 miles.
Yeah.
Right, for your recharge. You can drive to your house or drive someplace and recharge it. And you probably can charge your house overnight.
Yeah.
It's a perfect place to go electric.
Yeah. It's perfect. It's the perfect place to go electric.
Yeah.
Right. And it reduces the cost of an electric vehicle. I think is a third in terms of energy costs as a gas vehicle. Right. You can also set up your own charging infrastructure with solar panels at home. So while you're running your home on solar, you can also charge at home.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from a national grid point of view, the government just awarded 100 megawatts, which Wigton Energy has 50 megawatts of that to go on the grid. So we're putting on 100 megawatts, right, soon. And they are also, I think, going for another 200 megawatts after that, including battery storage.
Wow.
Right? So in a couple of years, maybe 3 years or so, we should be up to about 45% renewables on the grid, right? And this is at a time when the technology around solar and electric vehicles are significantly improving year after year.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, to me, countries like in Africa, in Jamaica and some other parts of the world where sunshine is in abundance, have to be thinking smartly about their energy needs and how they leverage solar to help them satisfy such needs.
Yeah, and if I can leverage that and I reduce my oil import bill by 50%, that's 1.25 billion US dollars a year, you know.
Yeah, you can reduce your trade deficit from 5.8 to about 4 billion. Still,
of course. So if I can get even $1 billion US dollars off of my energy, and I can get 500 million off of my food bill by doing my manufacturing for an agriculture, for tourism, for example. I'm talking about 1.5 billion US dollars a year that I'm saving. You know what that does in terms of controlling inflation? Because a lot of our inflation is from imported inflation. Right. So the foreign exchange rate will be stable and maybe appreciate. Right. And so my inflation is controlled. My trade deficit turns into a trade surplus. Right. And you know, I don't have to worry about oil bill and all that.
So are we moving in the right direction? Because they seem to allude to this. If you take a step back and think about it holistically, is the government doing enough as it relates to leveraging solar to contribute to the economy?
I think
improve the economy.
Yeah, man. I think it is happening. I'm seeing a flurry of activities now, and I think that activity is going to get more and more as we go along. So, you know, what we're seeing now, we're going to be moving at maybe double the pace that we are in maybe another year or 2 years. You know, more electric vehicles are going to come on the road, right? And in no time, what you're also going to have, Cranky, when you think about it, with more EVs on the road and that sort of thing, you recognize that communities are going to be much quieter now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yes, definitely.
And pollution is going to go down.
And pollution will go down, and health will improve. There's a lot of benefits to be derived, right? Health will improve. There's a lot of knock-on effects from.
Well, not if you continue eating the pork.
Well, you know what's funny, Dennis? Not to digress, but I was reading an article the other day where, you know, every school in Japan within a certain age group have a nutritionist.
Yeah.
Who decide what they eat every day. Yeah.
And that is what we should have to. That's a very good thing. We should let the Minister of Health know that, because that I believe that. I mean, now that you said, Cranky, a very good idea. We should really be putting a nutritionist in every school. Every school, and they deserve the meal plan for the day. And by the way, that meal plan doesn't have any processed food in it. Right. And that's that meal plan is very healthy meal plan. They were saying that the person who did the assessment and then do the survey said that I think the Japan obesity rate is about
4% compared to some ridiculous number for the US. But they were also saying
30%, yeah.
Right. He was saying the school he went to, so they have 300 students, there was not one obese kid in the school.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, your nutrition and what you eat affect your physical comportment. But the fact of the matter is,
I mean, apart from having soda at home, I have 3 ackee trees, I have breadfruit tree, and all of those things. So sometimes I just go outside and pick my breakfast.
And look, that's self-sustaining, right? Which people don't seem to realize is important. That saves you money on food.
Yeah.
All right. So you get you grow it. Yeah.
And it's much healthier.
And it's much, much healthier, which is most important.
Yeah.
Now, Dennis, how do we, and this thing about social inclusion in terms of youth and gender, how do we ensure that youths are meaningfully included in Jamaica's economic transformation, especially in the urban area and the underserved communities? Because the underserved communities is where the crime manifests itself from, right? Kids don't have anything to do. They're not the best educated. I look at the top high schools in Jamaica, and there was a couple of schools I saw which probably had no passes in the exams you take when you're in 4th and 5th. No passes. That cannot be okay.
Yeah. So we definitely need to improve. The first way to include children is everyone needs to have access, right, to primary school education, pre and primary school education. Seaga had spoken about it when he was Prime Minister. I don't think anything was really done about it in any significant way. But pre and primary school education is key, and I think it is important. So, one of the things about the US that we need to model is they have a very good social worker system, right? And I think that is important. That's the first thing, because you can't. Children learn the best between 0 and 5.
Right.
So you have to catch them at that time. So we have to have a good social worker system where people are going out there and identifying them. Now, if you look at what happened during COVID, when we had the lockdowns, we couldn't account for 120,000 children. You know what that does to your crime statistics?
That's a lost generation, basically.
Right. So therefore, we need to have that system in place to go out, identify children, ensure they have access to proper education. So building out the education at the pre and primary level is important, and give them a pathway. So the Ministry of Education has this pathways program that is developing, and it's working well. But give them that. Personally, I think that the PEP exam is really counterproductive. And I'll tell you why. I think that we are putting too much pressure on children at that age. I think that we must find a way to ensure that children matriculate more naturally than that. Right?
Right. Yeah.
In Japan, for example, I think I was watching a documentary where they say children don't do any exams before grade 4.
That's interesting.
Right? Because what they try and do is teach them. So if you think about it, Cranky, a lot of people go through school, but they don't develop the life skills that are needed to be productive.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And the school systems that were developed in the Western world is more like an apartheid system. So some schools are like, a privilege set, and the others are not. We need to find a way of equating schools in terms of development. Right?
So everything you're saying, Dennis, because I know that we have people in Jamaica in certain where would I put it? I'm gonna call it certain sectors who must have these thought processes and realize for the nation to move forward, these are material changes that we need to be making. Why isn't this being done? Because as you're saying, it's an elitism system. When I was in Jamaica, it was even worse then. when you go, they had secondary school and high school.
Yeah.
If you didn't pass common entrance, your life is over at 12 years old, people.
You're right. It has improved. But, you know, in order for us to properly include our youth, you know, and reduce the incidence of them getting involved in crime and that sort of thing, we have to have that commonality of development from when they leave the womb, right? One of the things that's important also, you see this national identification system they're putting in place is key, and the development. So one of the things that the Prime Minister spoke about is that the NHT and HAJ will be looking at the development into formal communities of the informal settlements. Because I can tell you, Cranky, from when I was at NSW as chairman, one of the problems why we can't collect all the garbage is because the trucks can't go into the informal settlements, you know, them now on the roads, right? They do when they have the garbage, because they have no way of it being collected at their gates, because they don't have no official gates, right? They just throw it in the gully.
So shouldn't all that be like, there has to be some, I'm going to call it policy setting, but a body that realize these challenges, and because all these are life improvements, you know, improving people's lives, you know. I mean, to collect your garbage, for example, it's a life improvement initiative, you know.
So the first initiative, which is what the Prime Minister announced, is that NHT and HHA will be converting informal settlements to formal settlements.
Okay.
So even if you have the body to say, I'm going to implement these things, without the formal settlements, you don't have the hardware.
Yeah.
You need to do that conversion. And I think that the NHT money, that's the best use of it, because what they've been doing over the years is just building new things, and the same people, privileged people, access it. But
right.
I think it is better for the economy, better for everyone, if we were able to build out these economies, because what you do is you increase across the board at the lower level the supply of housing. You're also creating wealth for those people who are in these informal settlements.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the way to go.
The question on the screen then is, why does Jamaica have a sovereign wealth fund to invest in infrastructure projects?
Well, we have a more money available in the fiscal now than debt to GDP is down to 68%.
It's amazing how money become available in election time, you know, but keep going. It's okay. The money just free up. People, money just free up.
We have been seeing the build out as the debt has come down.
Right.
But I mean, the question is valid. Remember the other day, we had a road maintenance fund, right? That fund was in place. But like with all other funds in Jamaica, like when the education tax was developed, it was developed for education in particular. But after a while, it just go into this big black hole called the consolidated fund. And they get lost there. You know?
It's kind of funny to talk about sovereign fund journalists, because if you think about this, Dennis, which is the reason why China has done so well, you know, is the commingling, right? Between there's no differentiation between what's public and what's private in other cases. Right. A lot of the major Chinese industry, the government invests in them as like a silent investor. So they basically behind the scenes telling them what to do. Right? Yeah. They either subsidize them, they dump in different markets, they do all these things people don't seem to realize that allow them to be successful. Do you think it's wise for the government, because sovereign wealth fund is that same concept, people, to be involved in that, or the private sector should just run all of that?
I think that the way that the world is going in terms of development, and if you look at the societies, Cranky, that have done well for citizens, is societies that have government involvement. You know, I mentioned the Nordic countries. I mean, Europe, for example, has a high level of government involvement, right? So those countries that operate in that way, they actually have done better for the society and people in general, right? So we developed, for example, and this is a part of a natural development, because we moved from slavery to feudalism, right? To socialism, right? And then we moved to capitalism. And capitalism has survived the longest. But the truth is that it's far from perfect, right? And we're finding out a lot of cracks in the system right now. But what
it's a selfish system. It's an incentivized system, but a selfish system. But
it's selfish, and that is why government involvement is getting more and more important. And I think you're going to find that, because if you have societies where there's no government involvement, then you have a promotion of crime and this sort of thing. Because as you say, it's a selfish system. We're going to find, especially with AI coming now, that governments are going to have to get more involved in societies.
So as we wrap up, Dennis, think about future outlook and strategy. What do you see as the top 3 opportunities for Jamaica must seize over the next 5 years to significantly improve economic prosperity?
A good public transportation system, right? And why I say that, because when you have a good public transportation system, is the foundation to move people around, right? And move people around comfortably too, right? So that they're more productive. But in addition to that, think about it, Cranky. You will leave university in New York, for example, and you will leave university in Jamaica. In Jamaica, the first thing you have to think about is a car loan. In New York, you don't have to think about that. My son lives in New York, and he wouldn't even thinking of getting a car, right? Because he lives in Manhattan and he just moves around.
It's even better in Europe, in London, those places. Actually.
In London. It's much better there, So you create disposable income for people by having a good public transportation system in place. And this is why what we're doing now in Jamaica, in terms of the school bus system, in terms of expanding the JUTC, is critical for productivity and the improvement of people's lives. The second thing, though, is energy. We have to get the energy costs down, right? And as you said, for a country that produces so much sun, to the point where yesterday I did a ride, I cycle, right? And I did a ride out to Morant Bay and back. And at 10 o'clock in the morning in March, it was 108 degrees. Right?
You're coming like the Middle East.
108 degrees.
Yeah.
Right? That is wasted resources.
It is.
Out here, right? I mean, it was killing me, but I was happy that the solar at home was charging up. So, but that is wasted resource. So if we can do that, and remember, Cranky, think about my situation. I am now paying 550 Jamaican dollars per month for my light bill.
So people, it basically, I wouldn't say it's free because you pay for the initial solar, but basically the monthly number is basically free.
And in 4 years' time, it pay off, right?
And
all I do now, is I pay down about $6,000 Jamaican every January. And I don't have to pay no more.
For the year. You have to think about that bill. That bill is taken care of.
Right?
Yeah.
So the other thing that we have to do is labor market reform to get productivity going, right? That is critical. And that's not something that many people have spoken about, but labor market reform, so that people who are more productive get paid more, right? And that is going to be critical to improve income levels in the long run. Right. The last thing, though, you said 3, but 4 is crime. Once people feel safe, then people have a better outlook on the future. And once you do that, what happens, Cranky, is that you start investing in things that is going to drive consumption.
Yeah.
And when you drive consumption, you're driving the economy. And if you do those 4 things, right? If you did nothing else, but you did those 4 things, then everything else will start to fall in place. Of course, there are some other things we need to do from a government point of view. We need to work on the procurement process. It's way too inefficient. We need to work on things. The Prime Minister spoke about the whole thing of efficiency in the government, right? We need to work on those things. We need to have e-gov, because I should be able to stay at home and do all my transactions with government. Right?
Yeah, I don't understand how that doesn't work. But anyway, yeah.
But sir, I mean, the most efficient one right now is the tax department, because I can stay online. I can pay my motor vehicle license. I can buy my fitness certificate, and I can pay my taxes online and that sort of thing, right? But there are a lot of other things you need to be able to do, online.
Right. What Dennis, what about what's the biggest threat or risk to our economy going forward, and how can one mitigate such risk?
I think the biggest risk to our economy right now is natural disasters. So hurricanes, for example, because the reduction that we saw in the GDP last year is primarily because of the hurricane season and Beryl in particular and the rains, right?
Okay.
We have to build resilience around that, and that's one of the things we're doing. So I don't know if you know.
But Dennis, before you go further, isn't that part of the whole concentration risk? And it's a subset of it because we're so dependent on tourism. So therefore, if hurricane prevents people from traveling, then it's a big dent to the economy. So there's a concentration risk, which needs to be addressed also.
Well, the biggest impact for us that happened, was the effect it had on the agricultural products.
Okay.
That was the main.
That's only 10% of GDP, though.
Yeah, that's a significant part of the GDP.
But I was thinking more of the tourists, which is what, 40% of GDP.
Right. But the way they're set up, they come back quickly. So
okay,
and that sort of thing. So within a week or 2 weeks, they're back up.
Right.
Okay. With agriculture, you're talking about a few months. It causes inflation and that sort of thing. So that's one of the things I'm doing. So I don't know if you know that I'm now chairman of ADPEM.
No, you seem to be chairman of everything, Dennis. What are you chairman? You know.
I'm no longer chairman of NSWMA. So I've gone over to ADPEM.
Where you get time for run so much things, Dennis? We don't understand.
but what we're doing is, and the Prime Minister spoke about it, is that we have to build out a resilient country, right? Because we know we're going to have natural disasters every year, right? But we have to be able to. So one of the things, for example, with agriculture, one of the things that the government is doing is that we're building out storage capacity. Because in good times, there's an abundance of food and it wastes. So we should be able to store that so that in bad times, the supply equals out. We don't have the hit, inflation and that sort of thing. So they're building out cold storage and that sort of thing. But building resilience is going to be key, because that is the biggest risk, I think, right now to the economy, because crime is going down. We're getting the infrastructure in place and that sort of thing. Crime was the biggest risk before, but I think where it's going now, the trend is really around natural disasters where the biggest risk is.
One thing we hadn't touched on, which I think is important, is around the household. When I did some research on, I did a program on, how would I put it nicely, the paternity issues in Jamaica. Yeah. And we seem to be a very one-parent household dominant, right? Yeah. And we know two-parent household and two-parent income significantly enhance one's ability, right, to provide for yourself and to improve your economic circumstances. Is there any discussion in the government or thought process about how we change the culture to allow that to be better? Because that's significant, People don't see the focus on that, That's significant.
No, I agree with you. So there is that discussion. What we're trying to do, and we do it even with one of the objectives we have with football, Cranky, and women's football in particular. We're just completing the strategy document. It's to create more opportunities for women, so that football is not just an avenue of going out and kicking a ball, but what it does is create social equality with men, right, and women, right?
So, especially as they're the more educated class now,
Yeah.
You go to UA and it's women dominant.
Yeah, we need to give more women opportunities, and we've been doing a good job with that, because 70% of managers in organizations are women.
Yeah.
What we have also now is the marginalization of men, and that's something we have to work on, because we've worked on building up women for so long, right?
But Dennis, the man if step up, Dennis. Let me talk some patois. The man if step up, Dennis. The man if step up, because them now take the thing serious.
Right, but
and then Dennis, Dennis, here's a problem. It also creates people, which people don't seem to realize. All these things are interconnected. Then the women then don't have partners of what we call equal yoke. Right. Because there's societal pressure about having somebody have equal yoke that is your partner.
But you see, why that happened in a cranky is that we were so focused on building up the women. Now we forget the boys. And we used to say, you know what, you go outside and play. And for the women, we used to say, no, you have to study because I don't want anybody to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
You're kicking football and not doing the homework. Right?
Yeah, we have to somehow have that revisited because it has so much knock-on effect throughout society when these things occur. Right? One parent household, women now progressing more than men. She can't find equal partner. It's still a one parent household, right? Which you're trying to change. As you get more educated, you expect to have more two parent household. That may not materialize because the society is functioning.
The problem is that we're educated most of women now.
Yes. I see somebody there in a class where it was 80% women, and you're like, when I was going to school, it was the opposite.
Right.
Here's my last question, which we had never touched on, which I stayed away from, but I'm gonna touch on it anyway. How can the diaspora then? So we haven't talked. We export people, like it's products, like manufacturing products. So we export people, a lot of people, different parts of the entirety of the society, different skill set. There has to be a way where Jamaica and that skill set can work together to improve life on the island.
Oh yeah, I agree. And the diaspora, I think, is an extension of Jamaica, right? So I think that the diaspora, if we can create a better society here, right, we should be saying to the diaspora, hey, come and invest in Jamaica. Have a house in Jamaica, right? Because some of them people I see, you guys overseas, shoveling snow and that sort of thing.
Especially when we get older, Dennis. We want somebody want to come over, Dennis, but the crime thing. You mentioned it, the crime thing. The crime thing, because we're saying even if we're coming out the medical, we can fly, come to Miami, get treatment and go back home. But the crime thing is a deterrent. The crime thing is a deterrent.
And that's why I'm saying in 2 months' time, I think people are going to start feeling safer.
Right. And
so we need to. We can't reverse this trend. We cannot reverse this trend. Remember, from 2023 to 2024, we murdered over 200 less people. That's significant,
People with our murder like our food, It's so bad. It's so bad, people. We have 200 only with 200 less. How much did you murder? 1,300 in a given year. It's just not a good thing.
But you understand what I'm saying? And we've reduced it now. Say if this 35% trend continues, it means that it's over 300 less.
Yeah.
Right? And then we continue the trend like that.
Dennis, here's the thing, Dennis. As the government, so if you're Amazon, so these things are coming as you're talking, they just pop in my head. If you're Amazon, the thing that you do is you go to your customer base and you say to them, tell me how we're doing. Did this product work? What was the quality? All those things. Has the government really engaged these youths and these gangs to fight? So you think why they do what they do, right? You think societal, one parent household, poverty, lack of education. You think but if you really thought about asking them about, what could we do different that would prevent you from doing X, Y, Z and would allow you to do your productive season? And we have that engagement with those youths.
Not that I see, and that's why I said the social work is important, right? Getting good social workers is important. Right? Because you're right. We should be out there. We should be finding out those things. Right? But I think that we'll get there. I like the trend in terms of where the murders are going. Right? I like the trend. I mean, as I said, when I'm driving on the road now, I don't have the same amount of bad drivers that I had before. Right? A lot of policemen are on the road.
And then it's not the culture, but this is important, people. You know what some societies do? They cut out even what is called to be de minimis crime. It's almost like a perfection they're trying to achieve with the view that if I reduce crime or anything that's deemed to be illegal, it has a cascading effect. Right? So the more material crimes, we get significantly lesser. because there's no tolerance for crime.
Well, that's what Giuliani did in New York.
That's what, yes. Even though it's a little bit draconian, but yes, that's what he did.
Yeah, that's what he did. Yeah.
In focus on certain minority groups, which but he did, yes.
Yeah.
Made a much safer city. So Times Square, which was horrible, became a place where people are attracted to when first time people avoid it. But you're right. It's a good analogy and good example. Dennis, we appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Thank you for your time, your wisdom, and your years of service to Jamaica development. And this has been insightful, thought-provoking. I know I'm going to get criticism after this because that's what Jamaican do. You didn't ask him this, you didn't ask him that. What about this? I know it worked. But if you learn something from today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That your thoughts in the comment. And what are your thoughts on this? I probably have more programs talking about this.
And also make a donation, right?
No, I mean, ask donation. Like, I mean, Fiestina Dennis, Fiestina Dennis, Fiestina. But I'm going to say, boy, Cranky want to do this for money, right? I'm being very socially conscious. If they want to drop money, them can drop it. But I'm not asking for the money. That's one thing we tell them to do. Because we know them staying in Fiestina. I mean, Fiestina them. But Dennis, you appreciate it, sir. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for being here. And it's very educational.
All right, no problem.
All right, bless up. Peace out. All right, everyone. That was Dennis Chung. As you can see, very informed about the Jamaican economy, the Jamaican society, how things work. Very educational in terms of what needs to be done to put the country on the right path. I think there are a number of things in Jamaica that's been done in a way that's to help. I think there are other factors which needs improvement. The whole concept of tourism, not concept, but the whole thing about tourism, service sector, agriculture is good and improving. But I think we're too over-reliant. You can't have 70% of your GDP coming from services. You have to manufacture. Manufacture is the key, people. Because in manufacture, you make products. You make pens. You make computers. You make vehicles. That's what we use as people in societies. You have to do manufacturing. And my hope is that, and you also have to develop this skill set to be able to manufacture, and this skill set to be able to, as Dennis was talking about, things like AI, for example. If you compare Singapore to Jamaica, given their time they got independence, it's night and day. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Yes, you only have 5 minutes because I'm closing down the program. Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Chung, when he was talking about crime as in terms of percentages, I think that can be misleading because, say, the country was having just a random number of 5,000 murders per year. If you say it dropped by 50%, that's 2,500. Right? But 2,500 is really high. So I think when you talk about...
But I don't think he was not saying it's not high. He's saying the trend is encouraging. That's what he's saying. The fact that they're making measures and you're seeing effect of your measures, but nobody disagree. Jamaica still has the highest murder rate in the Caribbean.
Yes, no, I'm not criticizing him. I'm criticizing how sometimes when you use percentages, sometimes it doesn't give you the true picture than saying the actual number.
Okay.
Because
I understand. Anyway, you cut it. He said 40 something in a given month. That's a high number. Right? Yes, Jamaica's about, I forgot the number is at the calculation. If you compare the US population to its murder rate in Jamaica, it's night and day.
Yes. To get Jamaicans to come back, who are afraid of crime, I think you have to get the murders down to less than 400 per year. Because that is getting towards an acceptable number regarding Jamaican population. Because if you look at a city like Toronto, of 7 million people, last year they had 84 murders, and they're saying that's too high.
And by the way, people, Canada has a gun culture, but they use a gun for entertainment. What do you call it? They use a gun for hunting. They're not for hunting people, which we do. Go ahead. Sorry.
Another quick point. We seem to tend to attribute infrastructure with development, and saying that when we develop infrastructure, we will get economic growth. But when you look on the actual evidence, you see something different. Because if you look at the major powers, the United States, the European countries, some of them China, Japan, whatever, if you study their economic history, you will see that they start to build out their infrastructure after economic development, not before. Take China, for example. When they started out on their economic journey in the 1970s, they barely had any infrastructure. They had
that is true. Yeah, but I think they work in tandem. They work in tandem, though. They work in tandem.
No, I am not saying you should not have any infrastructure. I'm saying that the serious infrastructure comes after development, and Jamaica is doing it backwards, because we do not research and we do not fact find before we go on any path. We assume things without any proper research. America was a very rich nation before the interstate highway system was built. So you see that these countries are developed, and then they take that proceeds and develop the country. What Jamaica is doing is borrowing money, putting stress on the Jamaican dollar to infrastructure that may or may not materialize in development. The system should be kind of reverse.
Yeah, look, there's some credence to that, right? There's hey, by the way, 1-1. Appreciate the super chat, 1-1. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. As I say, I don't ask for these things, but if you give it to me, but now refuse it, I truly appreciate it. Let me say some color. I don't totally disagree with you. If you think about when China started its evolution, which is the late 70s, and where it is now, obviously it started to bring in manufacturing into its country and develop those manufacturing base. They make product. They then take the tax revenues from those products and along with private sector to develop the infrastructure. So don't disagree with that. What he's basically, but it's like the chicken and the eggs, which come first, right? Development can engender economic activity, and vice versa. If you have the money, because you're developed to then generate tax revenues to invest in your economy and invest in infrastructure, that works also. I don't think Dennis was saying that you shouldn't have industries to help you. I think what he's basically saying is that he believes transportation move people, move goods and services, and therefore you need to build out your transportation system to allow mobility of people and allow easy movement of products and services.
Yeah, I get that, but the evidence is saying that I have studied this thing a lot, and I have not seen a country that developed infrastructure and then development followed. I always see the reverse. Where they specifically identified industries that they can exploit, an industry where they might have an advantage, and then they start up small, get investors to come in, and the factories tend to be close to the ocean, where they move the product from the factory to the ships, ship them out.
Yeah, but if you listen to what Dennis said, right? He said we have a competitive advantage in tourism, right? Even though I think tourism has to be thought of as something which we probably need to reduce dependency on. So what he's saying is that I have tourism. If you compare us to other parts of the world people frequent, like Las Vegas and Miami, we are cheaper. The weather is just as good or better. We have similar activities, even though one could debate that. And therefore, we should build that out more. We should make sure we are dominant in that area. The resources generated from that can be put someplace else. But I understand what you're saying. You're making a lot of sense also. Both things can be correct.
Yes, and when we talk about Jamaica's unemployment rate, Jamaica is second in the world regarding brain drain rate. Jamaica are the second highest brain drain rate in the world, second to America and Samoa.
I think Jamaica have more brain drain than America.
No. I said American Samoa, an island.
Oh, American Samoa. Oh, okay. American Samoa.
With, according to UN, over 1 million Jamaicans are overseas working. I think those 1 million, those people who leave for economic opportunity should be added to Jamaica's unemployment rate. No. You laugh, but it frustrates me as somebody who leave Jamaica and is overseas based on economic reasons to hear politicians jumping up all the time and talking about Jamaica unemployment rate is low.
Yeah, but think about it. Then every country would have to. No. But Carla, hold up. I gotta go soon, but hold up. if somebody's overseas making good money, they're not a dependent on your society, and you're saying they should be deep unemployed. You can't do that. Then your numbers would make it wouldn't be logical.
No, Cranky, but it does not give you if Jamaican unemployment rate is artificially low because people can leave and go find work elsewhere. Like 34% of the population is overseas for work and unemployment for economic reasons. How frustrating it is for politicians to get up and talking about how wonderful they are doing and their policies are working because unemployment is low. But the main reason why unemployment is low is because people are moving overseas.
No, I wouldn't say that. So I have a different take on that. You could have a job, but it's not paying you enough. So when people brag about unemployment, I ask them, what's your per capita GDP and what's the median salary? Right? I don't talk about, because if you're in certain countries, if you're in Singapore and America, it's a different discussion. Right? America's, I think, median is 80 something. I think median salary is 60 something. And I think the median GDP is 85 something, 85,000 something. If you go over Singapore, it's 100 plus, as I showed on the chart. Right? The argument has to be about, let's talk about substantively, when we talk about these things, what does that mean? So I employ a lot of people. So my employment is 0%, but they're making $6,000 a year. I'm not impressed. If you tell me the compensation, the median is say 25, 30,000, and your unemployment is 2%, I'm impressed. Because your purchasing power may be 50,000.
I agree with you, and maybe a middle goal can be found, but it frustrates me to no end when these politicians jump up and talking about how wonderful their policies are when Jamaica has such a high brain rate, and one of the reasons why the unemployment rate is low, or even the underemployment rate, because when you talk about people not working, not making what their skills should get them, you're talking about underemployment, and then people are able to move overseas, relieve the burden, and politicians take the credit. It's annoying to me.
Yeah.
It's annoying to me.
All right, Carla, thanks for calling. I have to go. I have to go. I'm past my time. But I appreciate you, Carla. I appreciate the call. Thanks for calling. Good discussion.
All right, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, man. All right, people. I'm gonna sign off now by saying I thank you for being here. It's good you being here. It was a good discussion. I think Dennis did a very, very good job of talking to Jamaica's current economic situation, opportunities in the future, what can drive the economy, and the mitigants can be put in place to reduce some of the risk associated with what we do now. I do think the concept of STEM has to be more emphasized. I think the one-person household needs to be there's a lot of cultural issues, people, that people don't seem to realize are detriments. India's divorce rate is 1%. And when I go to India, and I've been there a number of times, it's interesting how people they operate. There's a lot of poverty there, but there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of growth there, and there's a lot of enthusiasm there, and a lot of optimism. We need to have that on this side of the pond as relates to Jamaica. So STEM to me is an imperative, and STEM can help. Dennis was talking about STEM. I think STEM is what create AI, and always going to be important going forward. AI is going to be an imperative, but also what's important is diversify your economy. This whole 70% service sector, 20% in non-service, 10% in agriculture, that doesn't work, right? The 20% is industry, basically. The industry number needs to be a much bigger number, 40, 50% versus 20%. That needs to change materially to get Jamaica. Because I'm telling you, people, the reason why you think about Project 2025 in the US and what Trump is doing, it's all about manufacturing. He's trying to force companies to bring back jobs in America. The problem America has is lower quality and higher wages is contradiction to making progress. Don't ask me how that's going to work. And America like cheap stuff. That's why we buy stuff from China. Jamaica median salary is what? 10 times lower than the US? 8 times lower than the US? Between 8 and 10 times? So you should be able to make a product, and it's 4 times less than what they're going to charge in the US. We have to figure it out to get more industries in Jamaica. And also, as Dennis mentioned to you, which is very, very important, crime reduction, people. So you hear me mention El Salvador all the time. Now, I don't want to be Jamaica like El Salvador, but we have to have draconian measures, preventative and detective, to alleviate the crime situation. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you. I may be back by this weekend to talk about some other topic, but I haven't decided yet. So we'll see that work out. But before you go, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and just as important, please share. Peace out. Cranky life is the best to be now. For the best sports talk and it's free, yo. Cranky life will be your guiding light by keeping you informed both day and night. Cranky life, tell them. Cranky life, heed them. Cranky life, want them. Cranky life. From the courts to the field, we'll never lose because Cranky has the hottest news. With expert analysis, we break it down. Our in-depth coverage is best in town. Cranky life, tell them. Cranky life, heed them. Cranky life, want them. Cranky life. Cranky life where the sports is spicy and where we keep the discussion lively. Cranky life, get to know the name because cranky analysis is never lame. Cranky life, give me my cranky life. I want my cranky life. Must have my cranky life. Whether it's football or track and field, you know cranky is at the wheel. So join the journey through victory and defeat and subscribe and don't miss a beat of cranky life. Tell them, cranky life. Heed them, cranky life. Want them, cranky life. If you're from England or USA, from Kingston or Bombay, from Kenya or Canada, Lagos or Havana, visit Cranky Live. Tune into Cranky Live. Like up Cranky Live. Subscribe to Cranky Live. Cranky Live coming to you on weekdays. Cranky Live sometimes on Sundays. Pull up a chair and take a seat because Cranky will always bring the heat. Cranky Live. Me say fi tell them cranky life. Me say fi heed them cranky life. On them cranky life. Cranky life will be around. The cranky life is the best in town. Me say fi heed them. Me say fi want them. Me say fi heed them. Want them, heed them, want them. Cranky life. Cranky life. Heed them. Want them. Heed them. Want them, cranky life, cranky life. Heed them, want them, heed them, want them, heed them, want them. Cranky life, cranky life, cranky. Heed them, want them, heed them, want them, heed them.